So much for having me here tonight. It's so exciting to be able to tell people what the outcome of their funding did for us, and that's exactly what I plan to do. We were the recipients of your grant last year, and we created the trauma team, which had the following objectives. We were in the family wellness, or the family, children and family component of what you guys donate towards. The objectives were to reduce the effects of trauma on children who have been removed from their homes due to abuse or neglect, to immediately engage those family members in mental health services, and to increase the likelihood of a swift reunification, meaning getting those kids back into safe homes as quickly as we could. So did your grant dollars in fact have an impact? And I will tell you that they did. Better yet, I will give you a window into the impact that they did in fact have, what you all have done to change the lives of our kids in southern Palm Beach County. Virtually every night and every day in Palm Beach County, children are removed by the Department of Children and Family from their homes for being physically abused, sexually abused, and neglected. More specifically, there's an average of 60 removals a month. Last month was a particularly big month. We had 132. Tonight, before I came, I checked, and there are 3 removals that are occurring tonight. Before you leave this presentation, before you leave this event, 2 will have occurred. Before Trauma Team that you funded, what did a removal of a child from a home look like? Let me help you picture that. Typically, several cars will pull up in front of a home. 1 or 2 will belong to the Child Protective Investigator. Another will belong to the Sheriff's Department. They arrive using the element of surprise. They use this to their advantage. Nobody knows they're coming. It's often at night. They want to make sure the kids are at home. They swiftly descend on the house, into the front door, anticipating resistance, possible violence from the parents. The sheriff and the protective investigator must move quickly to get the children out. The children's experience of this often includes being awoken by the rushing of strange and unfriendly-looking faces into their home, yelling, screaming, crying. Their parents oftentimes end up in handcuffs. The police they see are armed and will draw their weapons as needed. The children see most of this. Their homes are typically not large. They see it and they hear it. They're given no explanation. They're told to pack some clothes, and they're handed a black trash bag. They're told to quickly, put on your shoes, pack your things. What do they pack? What does a little kid pack in a trash bag by himself in the middle of the night? I can tell you what one child packed. My son, we adopted him 5 years ago. He was one of those kids. He was removed from his biological parents' home. In his bag was a thin blanket with cartoon dogs on it, 2 unmatched socks, and 3 blocks, 2 triangle-shaped ones, and 1 blue square one. The kids are then shuffled or carried into a stranger's car, which would be the protective investigator. They're sobbing or screeching for their parents, or almost worse, they're strangely quiet, expressionless, in shock. They're transported to a foster home, or more likely, since we don't have a lot of foster homes available, they're transported to the protective investigator's office, the DCF office over on Sapodilla Avenue. It's not unusual for them to wait at DCF for hours while a placement is located. They wait in a room that has stained furniture, that smells funny, with a few boxes of mostly broken toys, and nobody available to explain what's happening. The protective investigator is down the hall in their office, trying to find a placement. Now don't get me wrong, these removal teams are very, very good at what they do. They're very good at getting kids out quickly and safely. They're trained in this. but their expertise does not lie in mitigating the trauma associated with a removal. The next day after a removal is another traumatic event. The kids appear in court at what's known as a shelter hearing, and that's where the judge determines what the next steps are going to be. Courthouses are big. If you've ever been over there, you realize the halls echo. The ceilings are high. Judges can look scary in their robes, up in their high chairs. Again, there is no assigned staff who has expertise in mitigating the trauma and explaining to the child what is going on. Now let me give you an idea of what a removal looks like now, with the trauma team idea that we proposed and that Impact 100 supported. The trauma team was called to attend a removal for 10-year-old Henry. Henry was at his maternal grandmother's house. She had obtained full custody of Henry after his parents were incarcerated the previous year for kidnapping and murder. Henry's grandmother had contacted DCF. This was a little bit different because she contacted us saying she no longer wanted custody of Henry due to his increasingly difficult to manage behaviors. He was running away, he was wetting his bed, stealing, and vandalism. When the trauma team arrived at the home with DCF and the police, Henry was told that he would be leaving. He must have had some idea of what was going to happen because he already had his clothing packed in a few Publix plastic bags. They reeked of urine. The trauma team therapist immediately took over the role of educating and supporting Henry as to what was going to happen. She walked him back to his bedroom as the grandmother spoke to DCF. The trauma team comes prepared with cloth duffel bags, by the way. No more black trash bags. The black Publix bags were thrown out, and Henry's clothing and the important belongings that we helped him to pick were neatly packed by the therapist and Henry as they talked. And then it was explained to Henry that he would be going to an office where there were toys, and that he would be driven there by the protective investigator, but that the trauma team therapist would follow, and she would be behind him in another car the entire way. And she did indeed follow, and Henry did indeed make sure she was behind. He rode the entire way, twisted around in his seat, watching the trauma team therapist behind him in the car. The next 6 hours were spent downtown on Sapodilla at that office I told you about, which we have since cleaned, organized, brought in clean toys, nice toys, blankets and pillows are supplied. And he remained there for 6 hours while a placement was sought. The trauma team therapist spent the entire 6 hours with Henry in that room and then accompanied him to the foster home once it was identified. She got him settled and told him she would be back the following day to attend court with him. And indeed she was. The therapist continued to see Henry over the next several weeks, continued to build rapport with him, providing him with trauma-focused therapy. She also met with the foster family regularly to provide them with insight and coaching on how to best respond to Henry's needs. After about a month in foster care, Henry began to express some suicidal ideation and he attempted to hang himself. The therapist responded quickly, expedited immediate services for him, enforced a safety plan with the foster family and Henry when he was able to go back into the home. The alliance and the trust that was formed with between the therapist and Henry, combined with the trauma-specific therapeutic strategies, contributed to what happened next. Henry revealed to the therapist the details of his abuse, that he had been beaten regularly and emotionally abused by his grandmother. Henry's beatings occurred with belts and cords, and they were often videotaped. He was also beat at the park or in public places in front of his peers. He was frequently tied to his bed for hours or for an entire day as punishment. He was not allowed to eat, drink, or use the bathroom. He was humiliated by being forced to wear clothing to school that he had urinated on while being tied to the bed. Henry told nobody of the abuse. He tried to run away. He tried stealing. He tried vandalism. He hoped that it would result in his grandmother calling the police and that he would be removed for something that was socially more acceptable than being abused. Henry's disclosure of his abuse illustrated his trust in the therapist and the strength in his recovery, and that he felt safe telling us the facts. He's doing quite well now. I checked in on him late last week. His negative behaviors have ceased. His emotions have become more regulated. He's doing well in school so far. He's made friends. The therapist continues to see Henry and his foster family, and they're working towards adopting him. And Grandma has been charged and is awaiting sentencing. So why is it important that we're trying to decrease the trauma associated with abuse and the removal process? The short explanation: trauma and stress cause chemical changes in a kid's brain. They cause chemical changes in anybody's brain, but the changes that they cause in a child's brain damage the brain's ability to develop properly, specifically in the frontal lobe area. And that's the area that's in charge of executive functions. Kids with executive function problems have problems with learning, problems with impulse control, oftentimes resulting in serious mental health issues. They grow into adults who are more likely to have mental illness. They grow into adults who are more likely to use drugs, alcohol, have trouble holding down a job, engage in criminal behavior, become violent, abusive, essentially setting the stage to repeat the cycle. The odds are stacked against these kids. Their futures look grim, and our goal is to change the trajectory that these kids are on to improve their odds. Our plan was to use the year we had with the trauma team, with your funding, to do the work and gather outcomes that would leverage our sustainability, leverage the possibility of our sustainability, as well as hopefully expansion. We grew from an idea about trauma team, from seeing a need for a trauma team, to an idea, to gaining your support. Within months of going live, we started receiving letters of support. The protective investigators were writing to their supervisors, emailing them and telling them what they thought of our service. Then we got a request from the Department of Children and Family within the first 6 months to enter into a memorandum of agreement between Parent-Child Center and the Department of Children and Families to exclusively use the trauma team. Early this past summer, we were approached to partner with DCF in responding to a statewide grant utilizing the trauma team model. We won the grant. It's just over $500,000, $630,000. So beginning October 14th, 10 days from now, we go live with our expanded version of the trauma team. Let me tell you about the expanded version. We will continue with a therapist being at removals and at court with the child. We will also have a therapist at the removal and at court for the parent. The family will be provided with family therapy, co-therapy with both of those therapists. There'll be a peer mentor that is provided for parents, a peer who has been through the child welfare system, possibly had problems with addiction, has walked in their shoes, to encourage compliance for the parents. The goal is to engage the family as a whole in services early, and then to provide those services. What we have learned is that in most cases, not surprisingly, the parents themselves are often trauma survivors, so the work with them is critical. We're still trying to reunify swiftly, and we're working on permanency. We want these families to stay together and to stay safe. Our original goal one of our goals was to take reunification from an average of 12 to 18 months, meaning the child is removed, they are not back in that home for 12 to 18 months. We wanted to reduce that time, and we brought it down to an average of 5 months. We'd like to whittle that down even further. So we did it. We did it with your help. We only could have done it with your help.